US rap music, founded in the US all those years ago in the Bronx. US have created a lot of trends, a lot of styles when it comes to rap music. I just want to speak on the differences between the US and the UK when it comes to rap, the cultural differences, and even the slight shift that I'm seeing, taking place when it comes to the familiarity that, rap is starting to have when it comes from the UK, and the little change I'm seeing when it comes to, the effect it's starting to have around, um, parts of the world and obviously the US. But let's get into why I believe the US sometimes, will have sort of dim view when it comes to other rap, that doesn't reside in the US. It's simply because the US don't need per se other rappers to come out of, different countries and obviously, you know, show them something that maybe they're not too familiar with. They don't need it, right? That's not to say they won't appreciate something that sounds good, because, once we hear things as humans that sound good, generally, we kind of gravitate to it. But I just think the US, the creativity from rap music in that country and the amount of states that they have, there's just so much variety that they can look into and say, okay, we are familiar with the US sound as it is. And on top of that, we've got enough people that we can relate to a little bit more. Now, from state to state, you're going to have, I'm sure, different things that are, unique to each state. And some states will speak a certain way, have a certain way of looking at things, slang, ideology on things. But for the most part, there will be an understanding, a general understanding whenever you hear a rapper from the US when it comes to different states as well. But the UK, I think what I've discovered over the years, and I think it boils down to a few things, why there's some form of like restraint towards the sound. And this is not a video about trying to have the US like UK music or anything UK rap related, because to be fair, I'm just having an observation sort of analysis about it, and I don't really have any kind of dog in the fight. But I think the UK, when it comes to the sound, the tone, the delivery, the accent, and most importantly, the believability, I think there's questions still from the US about how believable some of the rappers are in terms of what they may be saying from street perspectives, struggle, all of that, right? Anything that is considered a bit difficult or hard in their life, I think the US fans or people of music, interest, question if there's even any kind of hardship to the level that Americans will say that they have it at, right? I think they question even the believability of how quote unquote real rappers are here in the UK. Obviously, we know about certain stereotypes about the Queen's English speaking like this, and having that kind of tonality, right? That's what they think generally from the UK. That's how it is. Now, social media has kind of opened up the doors to give an understanding of a wider range of the UK. So you're going to know that that's not indicative of the complete country. It's just obviously reserved for certain people of a certain financial level and obviously a certain class. So you're going to know that there are parts of every country where there's, upper middle class or, and working class or middle class, like how they, describe it in America. So you're going to know that there's going to be different remits, different levels. But with the UK rap sound, the rappers who are considered more working class or street based, there's a question, I'm sure, from the US to say, they don't really got it like that there. They don't even have guns over there, for example. So are they really like that? Are they really that hard? So when I hear them, the lyrics, and I hear how they rap, I hear it, but is it really like that? And I think that's what Americans sometimes question. Is it really like that? And I'm not saying that has to be a basis of rap for people to like it, but I think that's something that's in their psyche in terms of what they think of the UK and the artists that they hear. They question believability. Accent is a thing, but I think there could be an issue with the accent just based on the rhythm sometimes that maybe they believe is not there. The rhythm, the tone, sometimes they may think it's too rigid when it comes to how they rap on beats. To me, I'm from the UK and I have ears that I'm quite aware of how UK rappers rap. So I don't feel completely that. Now, I'm not going to say that everyone has a rap flow that is brilliant. You're right. But in terms of just the general sound, when you're from a certain area, you could be from London, you could be from up north, you could be in the Midlands. There's always going to be different tones and accents, but just the flow of it, it sounds relatable, it sounds understandable. But even in this country, we've had, if you're from London, there was always this thing where up north rappers, this was years ago, many, many years ago, where up north rappers or Midlands rappers were not taken seriously as well when it comes to just the rap aspect of things. And there was always this kind of feeling of, oh, okay, they're rapping, but it's always about the London guys or the London girls or whoever, was popular at that time in London. So as time has gone on, obviously, lines have been blurred, familiarity has taken place, and obviously sounds have evolved. But yeah, even in this country, there's been questions from London-based people or London-based artists and fans about the sounds that come out from different parts of the UK. So we have our sort of moments of questioning things that come out from different parts of the UK. But as time has gone on, it's become more and more comfortable in terms of the sort of sounds that are coming out now from the UK. You've got a lot of people from up north, Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham over the years doing their thing in a big way when it comes to the rap scene. But the US, they will hear these accents. Some of them, they can get jiggy with it, but at the same time, it's more around, I think, just the flow can sometimes, I think, be questionable to them. And also, let's also speak on the slang. Certain slang that is, apparent on these songs from the UK. So UK has a big, and over the years, big Caribbean influence. Patois is some of the main sort of, or the main sort of way of speaking when it comes to, things on a street level or on a, in a city level. And you will know that there's influence heavy when you just are walking around and you're out and about, right? Especially if you go to certain areas. But that sort of twang and that sort of slang is apparent also in, let's say, New York, right? But in rap, it's not that prevalent. It's very much American ways of speaking, and then obviously American slang, So in terms of just being able to have that understanding, sometimes that can be an issue as well, just of what we're saying that is unique to what people from the UK know, or London know, or people from, like I said, up north, Midlands know. So those are the sort of differences you're going to have, just the understanding of how we speak on things that are unique to where we are here. But I am seeing also a slight shift. You can look at artists, for example, like Central C. He's managed to make some advances over there. You see people like Little Sims. You see Dave. Giggs has made some advances in America as well. These are all, rappers, if you're not privy to them. And obviously, people that have managed to make some form of noise over there. And I will say, based on that noise happening, it's because I think the music is at a point where the level has improved over the years. Many, many years has taken place with the UK rap sound and the development of artists and the understanding of how to, I would say, improve in terms of how they speak on things and being a bit more relatable worldwide. And it's not to say that that was a concerned effort. It's just something that has become apparent over the years, So, but I'm sure there's US fans or US people who listen to music that know some of the artists who are not maybe the ones I mentioned. They will be a bit more privy to the more, I would say, underground sort of artists, right? So, there's artists here that have a sound that is very unique to the UK, and the Americans will have a different culture. We will have a different culture. But I think some of the main issues boil around just the lack of knowledge of what takes place in the UK, and the fact that we really have had streets, have had what we call the road and you guys call the streets, have had issues on a high level. Nothing to, obviously brag about. It's not about that. Nothing about that. It's just more about being honest about how it's been in this country. So when you do hear rappers here, once you do hear some of the takes that they have on their songs, it's more often than not reflective of what takes place. Other countries have had their take on what they believe hip hop is, based on where they're from. But US created it. I can understand that they will have more of a eye on it when it comes out from a different country and question, okay, what's this about? Because at the end of the day, you're always going to compare to the standards that were set from the US, and that's understandable. But yeah, I think it boils down to those kinds of things I've mentioned. Believability. Is it really like that there? Are artists really about it? The tone, the accent, sometimes the rigidity of the flow could be an issue. And just having that kind of allegiance to what they know in America. But the UK, I think, are more open when it comes to hearing different sounds from around the world, particularly in the US. And I think there's a shift, like I said, with some of the artists I mentioned, and just a shift in just understanding the UK a little bit more, understanding perspectives, seeing social media and seeing some sort of representation of UK. And I think that's where the shift is taking place. Artists in the past, though, from the UK, Slick Rick, MF Doom, Moni Love, if you're of a certain age, and even if you're of a certain sort of understanding, they managed to, make some advances in the US sort of environment too when it comes to the rap. And obviously Slick Rick, to be fair, the way he comes across, he's more or less got the US vibe anyway. He was there early. So it's something that, in terms of the style and everything, is something that he brought there. But again, UK guys were like that back in the day. Slick Rick was one that really presented that style, but there were UK guys based, maybe you could say from the Caribbean, who came to the UK were like that, who had style of that kind of ilk. So yeah, there's been moments where UK artists, even from yesteryear, have managed to, make some moves in there, but in the US. But yeah, I just think the US has, very much its own sound, own identity. And yeah, there's always gonna be differences. And like I say, the US looking at it like, let's assess this a little bit more before we say that it's hot or not, because you guys created hip hop. And like I say, it's understandable that you guys will have this kind of assessment first, but the UK, and its rap sound is very much relatable to, I would say, a bit more of the European market as well. So I think a lot of artists in the UK, they're more geared towards going to that market. Any kind of reason as to why even the UK rappers would want to go to American markets, because it's a big market, and obviously to be able to earn and to be able to have a bigger fan base is something that most artists around the world would want anyway. So any kind of advances or attempts to break that market is something that will always take place, I will envisage. So but yeah, I think that's what it is as well. There's been a few moments where artists have broken it and have provided that lane for other artists that have come, since those artists I mentioned earlier. Away from rap, for example, the way we are perceived, even the way I would say the UK can sometimes be perceived, which is true. Sometimes we have this stiff upper lip sort of disposition about us, right? A bit more rigid, a bit more less fluid, like the Americans, who are generally known as a bit more open. But then again, you go to New York, you go to London, and it's similar, where it's a bit more hustle and bustle, faces are a little bit more squeezed up, I mean, I just want to go about my day, and I think it depends what state you are in. Obviously, that will give you a different sort of reception. But just like this country as well, you look, parts of the Midlands up north, it will be considered a little bit more laid back in their approach as well, and demeanor as well. So there's always going to be the similarities and differences, but yeah, just the differences also in our disposition. Yeah, we're going to have that resonate in music as well. So what we deem maybe as funny or as serious or whatever we deem in a certain way, it will be unique to what the UK is. And then obviously Americans will hear that and probably relate depending on what maybe city or state they're in and the sort of similarities that can occur when it comes to how people present as well. And yeah, man, I just think there's a little maybe understanding that needs to take place on both sides a bit more. It will be interesting though to find out what people think. And yeah, say some stuff, give some information about what you think, like the video. And yeah, man, I want to hear what people think about the differences.